Chapter 584. Janice was a little surprised. It seemed that Duque was not as indifferent to the internal affairs of the Alliance as the rumors said. According to the Alliance declaration, the moment the Dark Portal was destroyed and the Horde was defeated, Anduin and Duque automatically lost the authority to command the armies of the various countries. All military ranks in the Alliance were temporarily frozen until there was a new threat and they were forced to activate the Alliance again. This was only in the military field. In the eyes of the kings, there were only two commanders in the Alliance, Anduin Lothar and Duke Marcus. Mograine wasn't bad, but he was only at the level of not bad. He wasn't a real commander. As for Duque, after leading the army to save so many kingdoms, almost all of the 11 countries in the Alliance had to respect Duque. This was the main reason why the Barra family was so eager to get Duque on board the ship of Alterac. After the food purchase incident, Janice did not pay special attention to Duque. It felt like in just a moment, the seemingly immature kid that King Lang randomly conferred as a duke had grown into a giant that the Barra family and even Alterac had to look up to. Now that Duque directly mentioned the name that the Barra family and even the remaining forces of the Alterac kingdom were afraid of, Janice understood that Duque was not really content to be the Storm Duke. Janice's feelings were a little complicated. Duque's foresight, which had been proven time and time again, also made the Barra family's heart palpitate. Even her husband Alex had said that even if they succeeded in making Duque the son-in-law of the Barra family, he would not know if it was a blessing or a curse. Unfortunately, the threat from Rotterdam was the most real. Seeing how Duque had disregarded the past and saved Kuel Salis, she could only bet on the fact that Duque was a person with high sentiments. Janice sighed. Since you already know, I hope that you can tell me personally as Alicia's mother. What should we do with Alterac? The Lord of Presto had perfect identification documents. Unless there was a civil war, Alterac could only watch a person of unknown origin become the king of Alterac with the support of Rotterdam and betray the interests of Alterac. Alterac will become one of Lord Darren's provinces in 10 or 20 years' time. Duque gently tapped the armrest of the sofa with his right index finger. This Lady Janice was more intelligent than he had expected. If Janice had asked him in the name of the Barra family, he would have used his identity as the Duke of Stormwind to fool her. The problem was that she had to play the emotional card of Elusia the moment she opened her mouth. Of course, this made Duke a little unhappy. But seeing that Elusia had been with him for so long, and that she was the daughter of a high noble, helping him to work, accompanying him to war, acting as an emissary, and working hard without complaint, Duke really could not ignore it. Duque sighed and asked, "Before I answer your question, let me ask you in the capacity of a half-teacher and half-friend of Elusia. What kind of king do you think Terina's Menethil II is?" Janice was stunned for a moment before replying, "A third-rate military strategist and first-rate politician. As long as he doesn't interfere with the interests of Rotterdam, he is a merciful elder." Janice's answer was very skillful. She revealed her own opinion without slandering the king of a large country. Duque leaned back on the sofa and propped his chin with his left hand. "Since we all think he is a first-rate politician, do you think Terina's would let the person he supported waste a lot of time fighting against the Barra family? You know, the nobles of Alterac have almost all been wiped out. Only the Barra family is left. So what? Whether it's General Haas or the Barra family, we have used our actions to wash away the shame of King Eden's betrayal," Janice argued. Duque was silent. Left with no choice, Janice threw out what she thought was her biggest trump card. "For the sake of the Barra family's all-out effort to save you in the Stormwind Kingdom, and for the sake of Elusia, can't you help Alterac? If we work well, we can make Elusia the queen, and you the king of Alterac." His calm gaze, as if he could see through all the secrets in the world, made Janice's heart palpitate. Janice suddenly realized that Duque was the kind of person who wouldn't be moved by mere benefits from Alterac. Duque flipped his right hand lightly, and a map of the entire southern continent appeared in front of him. The next moment, East Elven, East Twilight, Redridge Mountain, Upwind Trail and other areas on the map were all marked with his storm flag. The Swamp of Sorrows and the Cursed Lands were marked in light blue. He threw out a sentence that almost shocked Lady Janice out of her wits. "If I'm willing, Rin and Lothar will support me in establishing a nation with these areas as my territory." Janice cried out in shock. She couldn't help but be shocked. This land was shockingly vast, at least twice the size of Alterac. King Lang actually approved of Duque to this extent. Duque waved his hand and the map disappeared. He crossed his fingers and rested the back of his fingers on his chin, staring at Janice with a determined gaze. "But I never had that intention from the beginning to the end, because the third war against the Dark Portal was inevitable. Establishing a country was just a superficial idea. You don't understand what the world of Azeroth is facing. If you could see what I saw, you would know that Lordaeron's greed for Alterac is just a small matter. Duque wasn't trying to scare Janice. In this world, even the Bronze Dragon King Nosdormu couldn't compare to Duque. Duque was familiar with the history of Azeroth's development, and Nosdormu had to pay a price for peeking into the future. Janice bit her lip, seemingly unwilling to give up. Duque, are you really not willing to help the Barra family? Duque was silent for a long time. Only the crackling of the firewood could be heard in the living room. After some time, Duque finally said, I promise I will help the Barra family at the very end. Janice's expression changed. She didn't know what the very end meant, but at the very least it would save her husband and Alicia's lives. But would the Barra family still be the same Barra family after losing the Fertile Hills Brad Hills, Cair Darrow and Dalen Mill? Janice stood up suddenly. Since Lord Marcus is not sincere, please forgive me for taking my leave. Chapter 585. Lady Janice had gone very secretly. Whether she came or left, she did not alert the Windrunner sisters. Duque, on the other hand, continued to play with Aurelia and Sasha as if nothing had happened. That was until mid-December, when Duque found a hot spring by the Windwalker Lake and saw Aurelia and Sasha wrapped in a bath towel. He couldn't hold it in and was caught by Sylvanas. After Duque used the Tree of Life to divert the three sisters' attention, the topic naturally turned to Lord Davar Presto. Wait, why would a human lord make Alexstrasza owe you a favor? The atmosphere had been good, but Sylvanas suddenly changed the topic. Yes, even the uncles in the tavern were bragging that Lord Davar Presto might inherit the throne of Alterac and marry Alucia. Duque, are you really going to let Alucia marry the next king of Alterac who popped out of nowhere? Hearing this, Aurelia immediately pulled a long face, and the demonic aura descended again. She didn't say anything and just walked over and sat in front of Duque. She crossed her arms and tucked her palms under her armpits as if saying, I'm waiting for you to explain. If I'm not satisfied with your explanation, don't blame me for flipping out. Duque still held his chin and smiled. I suddenly realized that Aurelia is quite cute when you're angry. Don't interrupt. Do you know what I want to ask? Aurelia was fuming. At this time, Sasha came in as well. Sis, maybe Duque has his own difficulties. Sasha, don't give in to him all the time, okay? You'll spoil him too much. Aurelia was a little angry that she even scolded Sasha. She turned her head. Alright, tell me, are you really not going to help Alucia? Duque spread his hands. Speaking of which, wasn't the original focus of the topic the Tree of Life? How did we end up on top of Alucia? Aurelia rage +1. Duque gave up on acting. Alright, in fact, Alucia's mother Janice came to me once a while ago. The Barra family wants to make Alucia the Queen of Alterac, and then make me the Queen's husband. They want to use my influence as the Alliance's vice-commander to fight Tyreena's. This. Aurelia was a little stunned. Alucia, whose marriage was used as a political tool, was pitiful, but the nobles of Alterac were not kind either. What's more, he wanted Duque to marry Alucia? What about the positions of us sisters? Aurelia was immediately unhappy with the Barra family. On the other hand, she knew that Alucia had helped Duque a lot, so Aurelia was very conflicted at this time. Duque, are you really going to marry Miss Alucia? Sasha felt like she would immediately cry if Duque gave her a definite answer. How could I abandon you and Aurelia for a mere king? With that, Duque pulled Sasha over and kissed her. For the first time, Sylvanas did not feel that Duque being intimate with his sister in front of him was an eyesore. A mere king? The king of Alterac, one of the 7 great human kingdoms, was actually a mere king in Duque's words? If it were any other man who said this, it would only be taken as a lie. Duque was different. He really had the right to be a king. However, he rejected it. He rejected it lightly. How many men in the world could resist such temptation? How many men could maintain their rationality in the face of great benefits and fame? Duque's tone was relaxed and cozy, but the 3 Windrunner sisters felt a heroic aura coming from him, making their bodies tremble with excitement. Aurelia was the most mature and steady elder sister among the sisters after all. In any case, what happened with Alucia just now also gave her a warning. Duque was technically single. Even if he announced that he was going to marry the sisters, such a marriage would probably not be recognized by the entire human society, nor would it receive blessings other than friends and family. Aurelia spoke up. It seems that us sisters are quite valuable, even more so than the king. Duque, why don't you tell us what's our price? Duque was slightly stunned. He suddenly understood why Aurelia would attack him at this time. At this moment, Duque was possessed by a movie star. At this moment, Duque was possessed by Stephen Chow. Duque held Sasha's hand with his left hand and moved closer to Aurelia. Then he held Aurelia's hand with his right. Of course, the words were copied, but after some slight changes, they clearly reflected Duque's current feelings. Duque looked at the two beauties who looked alike, and raised his head 45 degrees to the sky, deeply in love. Right now there are two sincere loves in front of me and I have decided to cherish them. Because I am afraid that if I lose them, it will be too late for me to regret it. This is the most painful thing in the world. If the goddess of fate forces me to use weight to weigh these two loves, then on the other side of the scale, I will put the entire planet Azeroth on the other side. If I have to add a time limit to these two loves, I hope it will be 10,000 years. There was no Stephen Chow in this world. Naturally, no one would have heard the original version of the love declaration, and no one would have been touched by the popular and widespread. Aurelia was stunned. Sylvanas was stunned. Sasha was stunned. The three Windrunner sisters all froze on the spot as if they had been petrified. They forgot to breathe. They forgot about time. They forgot about the world. How much does a girl want her love to be? Let me ask you, is half of the world of Azeroth enough? How long is a love's time limit? Let me ask you, is a lifetime of 10,000 years enough? If one were to say that she had left her homeland for Duque, and Duque had given her land in return, it would only be to shut people's mouths. In reality, it wouldn't bring Aurelia any satisfaction. But this time, Duque's vow really touched Aurelia's soul. At this moment, whether it was Aurelia or Sasha, they both felt that even if Duque was lying to them, they would be willing to die for it. Moreover, Duque's eyes were filled with sincerity. Suddenly, a bean-sized tear rolled down Aurelia's elegant face. Yes, Aurelia was crying. Sasha was crying as well. Sylvanas was crying as well. Eldest and third sister were crying on Duque's chest, while second sister was crying on eldest sister's back. Chapter 586. To be honest, Duque thought of himself as a selfish person. If he had to sacrifice Aurelia to save the world of Azeroth, Duque would never do it. From the beginning to the end he became a hero, just so that he would not become a zombie, and so that he could live a better life. Of course, it was purely because Duque did not mind saving the world while protecting himself. That was why Duque became the hero of the Alliance. When the three sisters finally stopped crying, Duque comforted them. Don't think too much. Regardless of whether it was Alicia's matter, the Bara family's matter, Alterax's matter, or even Davar Prester's matter, they could all be dealt with at the same time. Do you trust my ability to plan? Yes. The three sisters said in unison. Then leave it to me. Tarina's won't be able to last long. Let's just be happy and wait for the day of the victory ceremony to go watch the show. After a while, Duque was called away by his subordinate, Darnielle. Sylvanas straightened up and said to her sister, Aurelia, didn't I suggest you to find a way to marry Duque officially? You rejected me back then. Yes. Sylvanas looked in the direction where Duque left and said thoughtfully, I didn't understand then. Now I do. Aurelia gently held her sister's hand. What do you understand? My good sister. The kingdom's marriage laws can only protect wealth and power but not love. For the high elves who live for tens of thousands of years, 100 years is like a blink of an eye for them. Live these 100 years to the fullest and don't leave any regrets. There's no need to care about anything else. Aurelia's face bloomed like a flower when she heard this. Sister, it's good that you understand. Sylvanas smiled. I didn't really look forward to love, but now that I see you guys like this, I'm a little moved. Unfortunately, after seeing you and Duque, I suddenly realized that there really aren't any men in this world that can catch my eye. Second sister, actually, I don't mind. Before Sasha could finish, her lips were sealed by Sylvanas's index finger. Even if you and Big Sis don't mind, I do. A person only has two hands, there is no more space beside him. With that said, Sylvanas tidied up his clothes, wiped away his tears, and left in a carefree manner. At this moment, his eldest sister's voice suddenly came from behind. My good sister, I don't care which hero you're with, but you have to control yourself. It's almost time for Lothar to join the ranks of old men. Sylvanas almost fell to the ground, unable to get up. Time passed until December 22nd. The 25th, 3 days later, was a very special day for both Duque the Transmigrator and the people of Azeroth in this world. This was because in the capital of the Rotterdam Alliance, Rotterdam City, there was going to be a grand victory ceremony to celebrate the Alliance's victory over the Horde. In the territories of the Alliance, because the news of the victory had long spread, many people traveled thousands of miles to Rotterdam City just to see the glory of the victorious soldiers, as well as to watch the ceremony that was about to be held. It was because of the joy of victory but also out of hatred for the Horde. After all, this was a full-scale war that engulfed the entire continent. The destruction and loss of lives caused by the war affected every city and every village in the territories of the humans, dwarves, and high elves. As the victory ceremony had been set at the end of November, the citizens of Rotterdam had been discussing it since early in the morning. Have you guys heard? There will be more than 200,000 soldiers from various countries participating in this victory ceremony. I heard that there are 30,000 orc captives alone. Will we be able to see orcs then? I've only seen lords raising taxes and conscription in the countryside. I've never seen what orcs look like. I heard from the nobles that as long as you dare and can afford it, you can buy an orc slave to chop trees for you. We also heard that there seems to be an election for the king of Alterac this time. The former king, Eden, was killed after betraying the Alliance. That human traitor Piranod. He deserved to die. All kinds of thoughts were intertwined. A storm hidden under the victory began to gather. On the 22nd, in front of the Storm Fortress in Stormwind City, Anduin Lothar waited for Duque and his party. After seeing Duque get down from the carriage, Anduin welcomed him warmly and gave Duque a big bear hug. Duque. Although your territory is also very important, you have to take care of me and Lang. There's so much to do here. Ahem. How many times have I said, don't be so forceful? The marshal forced Anduin to reveal a charming smile. This is my way of paying you back for being lazy. In the next moment, he saw Duque stretch out his hand into the carriage and help the Windrunner sisters down one by one. Even Anduin, the uncle, could not help but smile. Of course, he knew that it was etiquette for a man to let a woman help him down the carriage. He also knew that if it weren't for the many politicians in Stormwind watching, the Windrunner sisters would have jumped down the carriage themselves. But he was still a little envious. The noble and elegant Aurelia. The wild and untamed Sylvanas. Gentle as water, Sasha. The three Windrunner sisters, who were dressed to the nines, were first-class beauties even in the entire human world. Only the eldest and third sisters were confirmed to be in a relationship. There were rumors that Duque had all three sisters, leaving only the expressionless fourth sister. Welcome, ladies of the Windrunner family. The three sisters bowed together. After some small talk, Anduin smiled and said, well, Lang originally wanted to use your teleportation portal to go to Rotterdam for convenience. The journey back and forth for more than 40 days would definitely be a torture. But the ministers were against it and out of etiquette. Bolvar for Dragons stared at Anduin without showing any weakness. Please be careful with your words, Anduin. His Majesty is the most important person in Stormwind. Before there is proof that the teleportation portal is absolutely safe, this kind of reckless behavior is not allowed. Alright. I'm not the king. I can be lazy and use the teleportation portal, right? If there's a choice, I hope that you and Duque will be careful. Bolvar meant that Duque should just use the teleportation portal and fly around randomly, and not involve the other important people. Duque smiled bitterly. After all, this was not the era where even soldiers were sent through the teleportation portal. It was useless to say anything now. Chapter 587. Anduin also knew that he could not win against Bolvar. In fact, Bolvar, the noble duke, had always been the first choice to stay in the country when the three of them were not around. There was no doubt about his loyalty. Unfortunately, Bolvar was too inflexible and inflexible. Anduin shrugged. If I could, I would like to bring the entire Storm Knights with me. Tyrrhenas is such a miser. He only gave us a quota of 1,000 people for the military parade. If we go beyond that, we'll have to be responsible for our own rations. Duque looked at the hundreds of knights around him, all of whom were envious of the 20 lucky ones who were about to set off through the portal. It couldn't be helped. Although it was good to save time, the teleportation ability of the portal was limited. The Dalajan had gathered so many pharaoh previously, and only sent 1,000 people to grim battle. They could either follow King Lang's example and set off by ship 20 days in advance, or they could reduce the number of people. Anduin suddenly realized that Duque seemed to have brought a lot of people, and it seemed that they were all going to the victory ceremony. Wait, Duque, how many people can you send to Rotterdam at one time? 20 people. Duque said nonchalantly. As soon as he finished speaking, the faces of the knights behind Lothar, who had already put on their ceremonial robes, immediately sank. Damn it, there were ladies and maids on Duque's side as well as Gavin Rad, Casa, and the other knights. There were almost 20 people here. Wouldn't that mean that only Lothar could be brought along? Duque suddenly raised his hand to stop Anduin from asking questions. Don't worry, I've recently gained a few new followers who are very good. After saying that, Duque snapped his fingers and a cold humph appeared in the void. It was just a humph, but it actually made the experienced knights feel alarmed. More than one of them instinctively put their hands on the hilt of their swords, even if they were just for decoration. Suddenly, in an empty space not far from Duque, a portal glowing with blue and white light opened, and 4 people walked out of it. This is Lady Legolas, Duque said as he pointed at a red-haired female knight with an impressive bust that almost broke the Stormwind uniform. Hi. The greeting of this tall and voluptuous lady caused a commotion among the knights. Duque pointed to the second person. It was a petite elven lady who wore an emerald green ranger outfit that revealed her sexy belly button. But strangely, she didn't have a bow on her back, nor did she have a weapon on her waist. Moreover, her eyes were closed from beginning to end. This is Miss Sarah. Actually, she's a druid. Hello everyone. I'm Sala. Her weak voice made the knights want to protect her. There was another commotion. The third was a bronze-skinned male elf with a single ponytail and a single shoulder exposed. He was dressed like a warrior. He stood there in a daze as soon as he came out, as if thinking about life. The fourth was a fellow who wore a wizard's robe and looked like the legendary night elves. The cold humph had come from his mouth. Duque skipped the third person and directly introduced the fourth. This is the Radiant Moon Archmage Dogsh T.O. Goss. He has a bad temper, please don't take it to heart. The pharaoh named Goss did not notice anything fishy about Duque either. He nodded as a greeting and ignored the others. Nobody knew where Duque had found these weirdos, but one thing was certain. These 4 fellows were definitely not simple. Everyone present was a brave warrior who had experienced hundreds of battles, but when faced with these 4 fellows, especially the 2 men at the back, they all felt a little apprehensive. Lothar dared to swear that he had never felt this way before, even when facing the tribe's monsters called goblins that were taller and scarier than the ogres. Be it the passionate Legolas, the gentle and pleasant Sala, or the 2 fierce-looking male elves, they all gave Lothar a sense of extreme danger. Duque, wait. Let's talk in private. Anduin pulled Duque aside and was about to speak. Anduin, I know what you want to ask, but I can't answer you now. However, I can swear on my life and honor that they will never harm Stormwind or the Alliance. Although I hate your mysticism, it's the same for you and Medivh. Lang and I have long learned to get used to it, Lothar said with his hands on his hips, looking helpless. Seeing that Lothar was a man, but he looked like a wife who had been wronged, Duque burst into laughter. Don't complain. At most, I'll let all your men go to Rotterdam to show their faces. At this moment, countless pairs of ears perked up. The humans of Azeroth were founded on the spirit of chivalry, and all they talked about was honor. Now that they had won against the tribe and made huge sacrifices, it was not too much for the knights to proudly participate in the victory ceremony, right? Hence, in a sense, it was also part of human nature to show off. Lothar's facial muscles twitched. Damn it, you're causing trouble for me. Before I went, I spent a lot of effort to choose these few representatives. Now, with just a word from you, all the lads are attracted to you. There are about 500 people here. Are you going to bring all of them? Lothar had a loud voice, and his soft voice was not much different from the shouting of ordinary people. As soon as he said that, the eyes of the lads dimmed. Yes, Duque was a Morning Star mage. How many people could he teleport? So what if there was a Radiant Moon mage? Duque pursed his lips, looking like he did not care. He turned his head. Hey Dogsh T. How about you do me a favor and teleport these few hundred people to Rotterdam? Goose tilted his head, pretending not to hear him. Can't you even open a portal? Duque said to provoke him. Goss didn't reply. He didn't even recite an incantation. With a wave of his hand, a teleportation portal that was 2 stories tall immediately appeared in front of everyone. The slightly illusory scenery on the other side. Everyone could tell at a glance that it was the snow-white city walls unique to Rotterdam. Ah! Someone finally cried out in surprise. But in the next moment, Goose stopped. The huge portal was like an illusion and did not exist anymore. Only the magic undulations that lingered on the ground told everyone that it was not a dream. Goose stood with his hands behind his back as if everyone owed him money, and did not look anyone in the eye. At this moment, the woman called Legolas seemed to be a little angry. Hey, isn't it just something that Duque promised you on my behalf? I'm holding on to it. Why are you making things difficult for Duque? Be good, listen to me. Show some sincerity later and I'll give you one. This time, Goose immediately admitted defeat. Duque turned and smiled at Lothar and his knights. "Gentlemen, go and get ready. We'll gather back in half an hour." Chapter 588. Located on the northern shore of Lordaeron Lake, the giant white city of Lordaeron was undoubtedly a very beautiful city. It was still a distance away from the Alterac Mountains. Looking from the west to the east, Rotterdam looked like a typical city with mountains on one side and water on the other. In the distance was a snow-capped mountain, on the right was a clear lake that would not freeze in winter, and on the left was a vast grassland. The atmosphere of the triumphant ceremony had already spread throughout the entire city. Since it hadn't truly been invaded, the few destroyed buildings had long since been perfectly repaired. There were colorful flags and beautiful ornaments that the Rotterdam Kingdom had collected from all over the place. Not a single beggar could be seen on the street. These days, even when they were shopping, people were dressed in festive costumes. The people of Lordaeron regarded it as a disgrace to wear the same outfit for 2 days in a row. Due to the arrival of the dignitaries from various countries, as well as the gathering of a large number of high-ranking officers, the lingua franca with different accents could be heard everywhere in Rotterdam City. At the teleportation portal in the north of the city, the mages of the Rotterdam Kingdom who were in charge of the teleportation portal were a little bored. "I heard that we'll only be busiest on the day of the victory ceremony." What? The Dalajan academic mages are not willing to waste a few days dealing with the nobles. They think it will reduce their time for experiments. "Where's Master Antonidas?" "He and a few Kirin Tor counselors have already arrived." "Where are the elves with their noses in the sky?" "We're here too." "Then there shouldn't be any big shots, right?" "No, I heard that Sir Duke Marcus and Sir Lothar haven't arrived yet." Just as the two earth magicians on duty were chatting, one of them suddenly changed his expression. "Wait, there is a teleportation request." "Isn't it just a request?" "Where is it? Let me take a look." The mage came over. "No problem. A teleportation request from Stormwind City. The password is correct, just open it." The first mage looked like he was about to cry. "No, look at the mana required. My king of magic. Isn't Stormwind Sir Marcus the only one who can teleport? How could there be so much demand? There's a team of 100 Radiant Moon Magi? What should we do?" "Let's open a small one first. Let them send someone over to confirm." "Wait, our magic array." "Oh no, it opened by itself." While the mages of the Rotterdam Kingdom were in a frenzy, they were horrified to find that the magic crystal, which was supposed to release mana after they activated it, ignored their control and poured mana into the portal on its own. The valuable magic crystal dimmed at an alarming rate. Then, right in front of the group of Rotterdam mages, a huge teleportation portal opened on its own. If this were a time of war, this would be considered an invasion. A portal that was even larger and rounder than the one the Dalajan used to send 1,000-man assault team was opened. For a moment, the mages of the Rotterdam raised their staffs and prepared to fight. However, the two Stormwind Knights that came out of the portal looked at each other in their most perfect posture and announced their names according to international etiquette. The Supreme Commander of the Lordaeron Alliance, His Excellency Anduin Lothar, and Deputy Commander Duke Marcus have arrived. Impeccable etiquette, officer, impeccable military posture. Just as more than 20 mages and hundreds of Rotterdam Kingdom's guards rushed over after hearing the news, 2 rows of tall horses came out in a single file. The Stormwind Royal Knights in formal attire spread out to the left and right as soon as they came out. They straightened their backs and unsheathed their swords. The tip of their swords faced the sky and their palms faced the lower abdomen, allowing the light swords to flash between their eyebrows. Yes, the standard appearance of a big shot. There seemed to be nothing wrong with it. However, every mage of the Rotterdam Kingdom felt as if they were going to spit blood on the wall. *CK. Which bastard is so extravagant to teleport horses here? Is your magic mentor a part-time warrior? Did anyone ever tell you that it takes 3 times as much mana to teleport a horse as it does to an adult? Even if the Stormwind Kingdom has money, don't drag the Rotterdam Kingdom down with you. The mages who were guarding the teleportation portal really had the urge to curse in front of everyone. That's right. According to the teleportation agreement, the mana required to open the teleportation portal was split equally between the 2 sides. This was to increase the stability of the teleportation portal and make it fairer. However, the amount of magical crystals consumed just now was equivalent to a year's worth of Rotterdam Kingdom's North Array. If it weren't for Lothar and Marcus, who had a terrifying background, the captain of the mages would probably have run up and scolded him. Lothar, who was riding a horse, appeared. While letting the horse move forward slowly, Lothar said to Duque, "Your follower is really impressive. He can teleport so accurately from such a long distance and it doesn't feel shaky at all. I still remember the first time Medivh played with teleportation. I vomited yesterday's dinner when he asked me to try it." Due to the fact that it was Storm who opened the teleportation portal on their own, the etiquette officer of the Rotterdam Kingdom ran over in a panic and said a bunch of welcoming words. However, Lothar noticed that the mages of the Rotterdam Kingdom looked as if their parents had died. "What's wrong with them?" Lothar asked Duque softly. "No, I guess they're heartbroken because the teleportation portal cost them too many magical crystals." Duque pursed his lips and then opened his palm. As if dismissing a beggar, he threw out a large pile of magical crystals from his storage bag. "I've just used up the magic crystals of the Rotterdam Kingdom. I'm sorry, these are for you. If there's more, just take it as a tip." "Do you think the people of the Rotterdam Kingdom are poor people who have never seen the world?" The leader of the mages didn't even bother to pick them up at first. In the next second, he suddenly gasped and stared at the magical crystals that Duque had thrown on the ground, unable to move his eyes away. In this era, the magical red jade could store the most magic power. However, the magic power contained in the items that Duque had thrown out was clearly far beyond the standard that the magical red jade should have. Such highly concentrated crystals could not be produced at all, and could only be found in ancient ruins. The official name was unknown, but the mages liked to call it arcane light. Such an item was simply priceless in the market, and any one of them would be enough for a Radiant Moon mage to help. Now, Duque actually threw out dozens of them casually? Damn it, how rich is this Duke Marcus? The leader of the mages, who had been pretending to be aloof just now, suddenly pounced on those magical crystals like a dog. He was not the only one. The other mages also pounced on them without any manners at all. That scene made Lothar's eyelids twitch. He suddenly had a feeling that Duque seemed to have come this time to cause trouble. Chapter 589. Ignoring the shouting mages, Duque and the rest went to the state guesthouse in the west of the city after passing through a huge inner-city gate. For safety's sake, the area with the teleportation portal could not be in the same area as where the politicians stayed. At this time, the mages of the Rotterdam Kingdom came to their senses. What the hell? How many people did Stormwind use the teleportation portal to come here? There should be hundreds of people here, right? Not only were the people of Rotterdam confused, but even King Lang, who came to welcome Anduin, was confused. Didn't they say that in order to save money, every gold coin would be used to restore the country? Why did hundreds of knights suddenly come here? Where did the warhorses come from? After all, warhorses were not marine creatures. If they were tossed around on the sea for 10 days to half a month, they would either die or be half dead. Warhorses were often sickly when they disembarked from the ship. What was going on with these 300 tall horses that were brimming with energy? You all came here using the teleportation portal? Not to mention Lang, even the Radiant Moon Court mage behind Lang had his mouth wide open. He could clearly see that there were two black decayed teeth. Anduin pursed his lips at Duque, and Lang immediately understood. Duque was causing trouble again. Duque touched the back of his head. "Sorry Lang, I didn't tell you beforehand. The situation is a little complicated this time. In any case, teleporting so many people and horses at once might only happen once in a few years." They even arranged transportation? Where did this mage god come from? Lang easily noticed the 4 discordant existences in the team. It couldn't be helped, these guys were too conspicuous. The whole team seemed to take a detour when they saw them. While entering the state guesthouse with Duque, Lang said, "Duque, this victory ceremony is too big. You have to tell me what's going on with them." After entering and closing the door to ensure that no one was eavesdropping, Duque told Lang and Anduin the answer. Several seconds later, the 2 big shots of Stormwind were so shocked that they were unable to say anything for a long time. At the same time, in the main hall of the Rotterdam Kingdom, several kings were holding a salon. "Thank you again for your hospitality, Your Majesty." The one who spoke was a tall, black-haired noble. His voice was deep and powerful. "Defeating those evil and filthy orcs is your greatest achievement as the leader of the Rotterdam Alliance. We should do something to prevent the remaining traitors from invading our pure alliance. If we succeed." King Terenas, who was dressed in an elegant gold and white robe, nodded slowly. "Lord Darren and the Alliance will remember you, Lord Presto. Through your analysis and absolute evidence, I believe Gilnis and Stromgard have more or less understood the current situation." The elder Xeon Greymane nodded readily. Salash Trollbane, who was in the prime of his life, rubbed his forehead. He seemed to be having a headache over Tarina's words, but in the end, he still nodded in agreement. "Thank you for your understanding, your majesties." King Tarina's himself was not short, but Presto's obviously much taller physique still gave him a sense of pressure. The Lord of Presto smiled, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. The three kings present were clearly the cream of the crop, dragons and phoenixes among men. But in front of this Lord of Presto, it was obvious that he had the aura of a king more than the three of them. This was truly a surprising thing. Presto's short black hair shone neatly, and he was clean-shaven. His thin face had the appearance of an eagle, which attracted the attention of many women in the palace. He gave off the feeling that he was more noble than any of the princes. No, it should be said that the three kings in front of him were more like country bumpkins. He came to Lordaeron before the Battle of Steel Stove Fort. Presto's perfect etiquette and elegant temperament first won the hearts of the upper class of Lordaeron. When King Janiers returned to Lordaeron on his griffin, even the picky King Xeon showed a rare smile. A few months ago, Presto was still an unknown young noble, but now he had become an influential figure. His political views made all the high nobles in the northern continent feel as if they had eaten a 1,000-year-old ginseng fruit. All the pores on their bodies felt refreshed. Look at this. First of all, since this was the Lordaeron alliance, the victory ceremony must be held in the capital of Lordaeron. Otherwise, it would be blasphemy to the entire alliance. Every country in the alliance must send troops to participate in the victory ceremony. The number and type of troops will be decided by King Tarinas. Every noble of Lordaeron was grinning from ear to ear at this point. Similarly, the surrender ceremony must also be held in Lordaeron. All the captives must be brought to Lordaeron for a parade before being distributed by Lordaeron. In fact, the people of Lordaeron can pick the strongest ones and use them to hold a grand gladiatorial tournament to attract spectators and earn back their money. The stronger ones will be thrown into the mines, and the weaker ones will be thrown to the allies. Especially Great Chief Orgrim, who had to personally kneel in front of King Tarinas. All the warships of the Horde will be confiscated and distributed to Gilnis and Lordaeron according to the ratio of troops they sent out. Although the warships of the Horde looked poorly decorated, the strong keels and sturdy decks will definitely increase the standard of the navies of the two countries by 3 levels. Kuel Salus will continue to send out the rangers to help Lordaeron clear out the remaining orcs in the Tirisful woodlands. Other than that, there were also other minor conditions. The reality now was that almost all of the 11 countries in the alliance had suffered greatly in the war. Even if they wanted to, they would not be able to get anything out of them. However, these measures that did not have much practical meaning could greatly satisfy the vanity of the people of Lordaeron, and even the people of Gilnis and Stormguard. After gaining the trust of the nobles in the north, it was also his suggestion to send the Alterac Eagle Knights, who were eager to clear their name on the battlefield, to transport food before the Black Rock Mountain battle. Those traitors are not trustworthy. Leaving them on the battlefield will only make them a weak spot for the Horde to attack. He once suggested that Tarinas take control of the Alterac army, and then split all the Alterac Knights into the various Lordaeron cavalry regiments. Although Stormguard and the other countries also felt that it was necessary to take control of the Alterac army at the time, but after the war they felt that they should not continue to exercise unilateral control over the Alterac army. At this time, Presto stood up again and used his glib tongue to give a reasonable explanation for everything. What was even more amazing was that under a coincidence, he found evidence to support his argument. Chapter 590. On this day, King Tarinas Menethil II, who was growing old and fat by the day, made a decision that shocked even himself after careful consideration. This decision was so important that he even ignored the news of Duque's high-profile appearance. No, to be precise, he instinctively refused to listen to any news about Duque. Every time Duque appeared, it was equivalent to stealing the limelight from Lordaeron. After carefully confirming that the cards in his hand were all indestructible, and that Duque would not be able to shake them, Tarinas ignored Duque. For the past 3 days, Duque had been living a comfortable life. As soon as Legolas and the other 3 arrived at the Rotterdam Kingdom, they opened the teleportation portal and left after entering the state guesthouse. They would not return until the morning of the 25th. The 3 Windrunner sisters were the same. They went to Alterac Mountain to play. Duque, on the other hand, was either bragging to Kale, that's drinking with Magni Bronzebeard while talking about high-mobility combat, or discussing with Kudrin Wildhammer about the Engerman Slalom and the energy theory of aerial combat. These 3 days, Duque basically drank until dawn, then slept soundly, woke up in the afternoon, and then had banquets, dances and cocktail parties. He did not seem to know that in Lordaeron, there was a girl whose fate was bound, staring in the direction of the guesthouse with a sad expression. 3 nights in a row nothing happened. On the night of the 24th, the girl once again looked in the direction of Duque. Duque seemed to have drunk too much and unconsciously walked out of the balcony. He should have been satisfied. But for some reason the girl prayed for more. Prayed that Duque could hear her, prayed that he could hear her prayers. A miracle happened. A beautiful rose appeared in Duke's hand as if he was performing a magic trick. It was an ice and snow rose made of pure magic. In the dark, the rose was so crystal clear, so dazzling, but because of the angle between the trees, it could only be seen from the girl's direction. The girl almost doubted her eyes. She rushed into the room and took out a telescope. That's right. That rose, which should have been unique in the world, did not disappear. Duque seemed to have sensed the girl's gaze, and the smile on his face did not disappear. She had been imprisoned and under the strictest surveillance. She couldn't even send out a note or a magic message. How did he know? No, everything was no longer important. Through the binoculars, she read Duque's lips. Duque only said 2 words. At this moment, tears suddenly flowed down her beautiful face like a dam that had collapsed, and they flowed down her beautiful face. He remembers. He still remembers. That night, no one else knew about this little episode. In the blink of an eye, it was December 25th. It was a day that the entire alliance would remember. Unfortunately, the grander the day, the more problems there were. Why did you cancel our victorious return formation? We can accept to appear in any position, but what right do you have to revoke our right to participate in the victory ceremony? In the temporary military camp outside the city, General Haas of Alterac couldn't help but roar at the ceremonial officer from Lordaeron, Count Frankie. Behind him was a team of 300 royal guards. Count Frankie didn't mind Haas's anger at all. Your king Eden Pyrenod betrayed the alliance. Alterac is already a disgrace to the alliance. We allowed you to participate in the war just to let you atone for your crimes and wash away your shame. Now we're holding a victory ceremony to welcome the heroes of the alliance. You sinners have the nerve to stand side by side with the heroes? King Pyrenod is a traitor. We admit it too. But our Eagle Knights, from the beginning of the war to the end, we lost 80% of our people. It's good to be cannon fodder. It's good to charge back at the charging horde. We gritted our teeth and persevered. We thought we've used our achievement points to wash away the shame on us. It was already agreed that we could participate in the ceremony. Why did you suddenly say we can't? Haas's chest rose and fell rapidly. His weather-beaten cheeks were covered in tears. The quarrel here even alarmed the armies of other countries. What happened? It seems that Lordaeron suddenly doesn't want Alterac's troops to participate in the victory ceremony. They're already here. Aren't they messing with us? The soldiers of the various countries discussed, but no one dared to step forward. After all, it was the capital of the Rotterdam Kingdom, which was the strongest among the alliance countries. Today was a big day for the Rotterdam Kingdom. How could they not give the alliance some face in the territory of the alliance? No one knew why the Rotterdam suddenly wanted to target Alterac. Even though everyone sympathized with the troops that had been fighting on the front lines of the alliance, no one dared to stand up for them before they could figure out the situation. At this time, 2 unexpected big shots appeared. The alliance commander Anduin Lothar. The alliance deputy commander Duke Marcus. The 2 actually came together. What happened? Lothar's trademark loud voice was very suitable for calming the situation. General Haas's first reaction was joy, but in the next moment, his expression darkened again. The alliance army had been disbanded, and the armies now belonged to each country. They were just formally under the banner of the alliance. Were Lothar's words still useful? To be honest, after hearing Count Frankie's words, Lothar frowned deeply. This matter was not easy to handle. They were allies after all. To be honest, everyone had contributed to the fight against the orcs and shed blood. Why make things difficult for Alterac at this time? No matter how slow Lothar was, he instinctively smelled the smell of a political conspiracy. General Haas. Duque suddenly said, "Did you bring the armor you used before? I'm not talking about those things that are just for show." Haas quivered. He suddenly realized what Duke wanted to do. His voice trembled as he said, "Yes. Yes, of course. Those are our real merits. Yes. Scars were the merits of a man." Duque said in a deep voice, "Put them on. We, the Knights of Stormwind, will wear them too." Haas couldn't believe his ears. He couldn't help but subconsciously look at Count Frankie of Rotterdam. Count Frankie screamed on the spot, and raised an extremely exquisite scroll in his hand. "Duke Marcus, what do you want?" This was a direct order from His Majesty Tyrrhena's Menethil II, and the order was here. It's not only an order from the King of Rotterdam, but also the leader of the Rotterdam Alliance. Chapter 591. Hiss. As the sound faded, the surroundings became deathly silent. Tyrrhena's was trying to force the Alterac people into a dead end. Wasn't it just because Alterac made a mistake and let the Horde in? Lordaeron did not fall in the end. Was there a need to hold such a grudge? To be honest, everyone felt that King Prianod's betrayal was very shameful. In the beginning, everyone also felt that the Alterac Eagle Knights were shameless. But how did they do it? Withstanding the endless humiliation from the Alliance, they charged at the front and retreated at the back. Many times they were completely crippled. But what happened? How many times did the 1,000 knights fight and half of them died? When the knights died, the knight candidates took over. When the candidates died, the apprentices took over. Using the weapons left by their predecessors, they hammered the curved armor piece by piece before using it again. They had already washed away the humiliation with blood and bravery. Anyone who had a little understanding of the Eagle Knights would not look down on this iron-blooded army. Now, with a single order from Tyrrhena's, they had been eliminated. How could they accept this? Duque had made a name for himself. But now that the Alliance army had been disbanded, Duque was just a Grand Duke. As a lord of the southern continent, did he have to offend the strongest king in the northern continent? Daneth Trollbane peeked at Duque's ridiculously young face. He should not have had any hope, but he was still a little expectant. Muradin Bronzebeard and Cudrin Wildhammer took a step forward, but were pulled back by Magni Bronzebeard, one in each hand. He is Duque. It was very simple, he was Duque. That magical Duque. Since the Alliance was formed, he had created countless miracles, and had been coordinating with almost every deputy commander of the Alliance. If Duque really did not do anything, then his title of miracles would cry. That was what everyone thought, and that was what they all hoped for. At this time Duque smiled. His voice suddenly became loud and clear. Today is the Alliance's victory celebration. Today was not Lordaeron's victory celebration. You're just a dog that has never been on a battlefield and barks without the leash Tyrrhena's gave you. If you can understand human language, then get lost, or I'll make you get lost. As his words fell, the entire world was shocked. How dare Duque? Duque really dared to do that? Almost every Alliance warrior who witnessed this scene stared at Duque with bulging eyes. The blood in his chest suddenly surged to the extreme. They didn't even dare to breathe, afraid that they would miss this historic moment. Duke Frankie was like a dog whose tail had been stepped on. He almost jumped up. Duke Marcus, you're just a duke. How dare you disobey His Majesty Tyrrhena's Menethil II's order? Are you done? Duque smiled and gestured to Lothar not to stop him. Lothar lowered his head and held his forehead. All right, I hope you really know what you're doing. The next moment there was a loud slap. A hard slap landed on Count Frankie's oily face. It was called lightning, but that was only relatively speaking. Duque's attack was in slow motion to the warriors present. Duque was slow, but Frankie was even worse. It was like a snail being robbed by a tortoise and then reporting. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. He was too fast. Alright, that was just a lame joke. What everyone was more concerned about was that Duque hit him. Duque actually slapped Frankie while he was holding Tyrrhena's order. The slap made the oily guy's mouth crooked. You dare hit me? Count Frankie covered his face like a little wife who had just been bullied. His eyes widened in disbelief, and for the first time, there was an emotion called fear on his arrogant face. Without giving him time to react, he slapped him again with the back of his hand. Slap. This slap was even heavier, causing him to see stars. He actually spun around and fell on his butt on the snow-covered ground. His luxurious purple pants looked like they were stained with a pile of *T. What are you doing? Only then did the captain of the Imperial Guards behind Count Frankie react, and he suddenly pulled out his sword from his waist. After all, he was originally sent here by Tyrrhena's to hold down the fort, to suppress the disobedience of the other countries. Now, right in front of him, his messenger was slapped, and he was slapped twice when he showed the king's order. How could Rotterdam hide its face? Get lost! Duque shouted. With the help of magic amplification, a loud voice exploded in the joint army camp like thunder. Along with this roar, hundreds of hands of magic suddenly appeared out of thin air. After just a second and a half of casting, the same number of arcane shock as the hands of magic suddenly blasted on the chest of the soldiers of the Rotterdam Royal Guards. 300 people were sent flying at the same time. It was a spectacular scene. Danish Trollbane opened his mouth wide in astonishment. The Bronzebeard brothers and Kudrin raised their war hammers high. The knights of Stormwind and Alterac hit the shields with their swords. The dwarves hit the shields with their war hammers and cheered loudly. The elves whistled at the rangers. Under the gaze of tens of thousands of Alliance soldiers, the 300 people were all sent flying for a few meters, and they fell on their butts. All of them were dizzy from the fall. Before they could get up, Duque's next attack arrived. Slap, slap, slap. A mage's hand appeared on the collar of each royal guard's breastplate. This kind of mage's hand lifted him up with one hand, and then the other mage's hand quickly followed up and slapped him. A slap in the front hand, a slap in the back hand. A slap in the front hand, a slap in the back hand. A slap in the front hand, a slap in the back hand. Back and forth, these arrogant people who only had eyes for Tarinas and did not care about the politicians of the various countries were slapped hard again and again. How many slaps were slapped? No one could count. Anyway, they were all handsome and good-looking, and all of them were slapped swollen by these hands of magic that suddenly came out of nowhere. Well, a team of male model-level Imperial Guards could now be renamed as the Pighead Army. It wasn't that no army of Lordaeron discovered this, and Abendis was the one who rushed over. But even he was shocked. He didn't expect that Duque would dare to turn against him like this. But the glory of the country. Just as Abendis was about to do something, he suddenly felt an extremely terrifying pressure. The endless pressure made him feel like a frog being targeted by a giant poisonous snake. He had no way to resist at all. To die or not to die, it all depended on the mood of the existence that seemed to be at the top of the food chain. Abendis's back was instantly drenched in sweat. In front of him, Duque flipped over and got on his horse. He raised the Grand Marshal's staff, high up, and shouted to the sky, "Today, this is the Alliance's victory ceremony. Anyone who killed orcs for the Alliance, anyone who has shed blood for humans, dwarves, and elves is qualified to participate. This has nothing to do with national boundaries, only fairness and justice. If you are a man, come with me. If the people of Lordaeron don't give you glory, I, the Vice Commander of the Alliance, will. Let's go." Chapter 592. They used to think that mages were cowards who only knew how to hide in the safe areas behind the warriors who were fighting in the front. Hence, in the hearts of most of the Alliance soldiers, no matter how good Duque's strategy was, or how good his internal affairs and logistics abilities were, he would always be the deputy commander of the Alliance. The real commander was still Anduin Lothar, who dared to charge to the front line and fight the orcs. No one felt that there was anything wrong with that impression of Duque. Today, Duque used his actions to subvert that impression. It was not right to say that it was subverting. It should be a more exaggerated sublimation. Seeing this scene, every soldier suddenly felt a fire burning in their hearts. Without comparison, there would be no contrast. They were all killing enemies for the Alliance, who didn't want to return home in glory and enjoy the cheers and praises of the people after the war. For the soldiers of other countries, returning triumphantly in Rotterdam City was completely different from returning triumphantly in their own capital. Alright, Rotterdam was the leader of the Alliance. They had just finished the final battle at the Dark Portal, and they had crossed the entire Eastern Kingdom from the southernmost tip to the northernmost tip. They were rushing with all their might, and they were marching almost every day. Well, when they finally arrived, they found that everything was a waste, be it supplies or camp. The Allies ate black bread made from moldy millet. It was thick and hard, and it could be used as a stick to beat people up. Even the auxiliary soldiers of the Rotterdam ate white bread that tasted good. It was freezing cold, and the Allied soldiers who rushed over had no supplies. The Alliance soldiers here had to report several times to get a set of linen clothes. They were shivering from the cold. The people of the Rotterdam could get their own cotton clothes. They were treated differently. The people of the Rotterdam acted like they were the best in the world, and their attitudes were actually just one sentence. Without the support of the Rotterdam, you're all a motley crew. Letting you participate in the victory ceremony is a gift from the Rotterdam. Hurry up and thank us. Which family had not been bullied before? Who would have thought that they would have to be bullied after coming to the Rotterdam? At this moment, Duque's actions were simply satisfying. From the soul to the heart, the intense flames were boiling in every blood vessel and burning in every cell. Follow him. Follow him. Follow Lord Marcus. Yes. We've all bled for the Alliance, we've all given our lives. Why is there a difference in treatment? Countless swords and spears were raised high into the sky. The blade, which was stained with the blood of the orcs, glowed with a faint red light. Countless shouts converged into a loud sound that exploded in the camp. Duque rode his horse proudly and walked side by side with Anduin towards General Abendis, who was guarding the entrance of the camp. "Get out of my way or I'll step over your dead body." Abendis shuddered. He saw the look in Duque's eyes. Duque was clearly saying, "I saved you once, but I can also take back your life." Damn it. Duque was serious. General Abendis was one of the higher-ups, and he knew what King Tyrrhenas was planning. He also felt that his king was a little unkind, but he was still the king that he had sworn to serve for the rest of his life. His body trembled and his mouth twitched for a long time before he managed to say, "Duque, is it worth it?" Duque did not answer him directly. He leaned over and whispered into Abendis's ear, "If the entire Alterac was destroyed, I would have nothing to say. But now, if the leader of the alliance can occupy the territory of his allies, then there's no need for such an alliance." His voice was not loud, but it was not soft either. It was enough for Abendis and Lothar to hear. At this moment, Lothar suddenly understood Duque's intention. "Duque, I support you." Lothar's loud voice easily caused even louder cheers behind him. At this time, the victory ceremony of Rotterdam City had already begun for an hour. In the first half of the ceremony, it was the most eye-catching ceremony of the captives. 25,000 orcs had their hands tied behind their backs, and they were shackled with iron shackles that weighed at least 50 kilograms. They were then tied up with thick iron chains and strung up in groups of 100. They lowered their heads and walked through the long and wide streets under the gaze of countless people. At first, the orc captives attracted the attention of the citizens. "Oh my God! They're too burly. Are our warriors supposed to fight against such monsters? Look at their fangs. They're even more violent than the teeth of a wild boar. Holy light above, our brave warrior actually defeated such an opponent." Soon, after a short period of amazement, it was ushered in a frenzy of anger. "Bastard! Give me back my husband." A lady on the balcony on the second floor threw the first rotten tomato at the orcs. "Give me back my father." A young child who was about 7 or 8 years old threw the first stone. In just a few seconds, thousands of objects flew out from all corners of the street and poured onto the captives. The citizens could not rush past the 2 lines of city guards on the street, so they could only vent their anger in that way. The Battle of the Dark Gate this time had almost swept through all of Rotterdam's territories, from the Silver Pine Forest in the southwest to the holy city of Stratholm in the northeast, and then to the core of Rotterdam City. The heavy loss of human lives was shared equally among almost every family. Even if they were not in mourning, it was more or less the same. Every orc captive had a bloody nose and swollen face, and even their fangs were broken. However, they did not dare to resist and even roared at the top of their lungs. They just lowered their heads and were escorted through the long street. Among the 25,000 orcs, there was only one who held his head high, Chief Orgrim. His mouth was sealed, and his legs were shackled tightly to a metal plate that weighed 2 tons. His wrists were also shackled tightly and he was kneeling just like that. However, his head had never been lowered. Behind the cage there was a sign with the words, "Chief of the Horde," written on it. This caused Orgrim to suffer the most attacks. The stones and rotten tomatoes that were thrown at him almost drowned him to death. Even the soldiers who were wearing heavy armor to prevent themselves from being smashed to death by the citizens' attacks were too violent. In the end, they had no choice but to let the mages blow away the objects around Orgrim. "Hang him! Hang him! Hang the chief of the orcs!" The angry citizens raised their fists high and let out a monstrous roar. On the main balcony of the palace, King Tyrrhenas and his children, Arthas and Kalia, looked at the scene with satisfaction. After the captive offering ceremony, it was time for the real victory ceremony. Countless handymen, who had long been prepared, quickly rushed out of the alleys of the city with brooms and other things. They cleaned up the debris on the streets with great agility and proficiency. In just 10 minutes, the road from the North Gate to the royal palace was cleaned. At this moment, Tyrrhena's expression suddenly froze. It was because he saw through the binoculars that the Mountain Eagle flag of Alt-Rank followed closely behind the Storm Lion flag, flying at the North Gate of the Rotterdam Kingdom. Chapter 593. Tyrrhenas almost spat out a mouthful of blood on the white jade balcony railing. His script was perfect. If he wanted to take over Alterac, he could not make the Alterac people into war heroes. If he let the Eagle Knights attend the ceremony, it would be a hindrance to their next move. That useless Frankie. Didn't I give him the order? Tyrrhena's almost wanted to order his men to hang the idiot who did not do his job well. It was too late now. They had already entered the battlefield. Were they supposed to let Mograine chase the Eagle Knights back? But, who let them in? What was Abendis doing? Wait. Where did the horses in Stormwind come from? Tyrrhena's trembled slightly. The Stormwind Knights had arrived. As the first kingdom to fight against the orcs, and also the first kingdom to be destroyed by the brutal horde, the Stormwind Knights were the first victorious team to enter the battlefield, which had a special meaning. This was out of the expectations of the people from Lordaeron and the people from other countries. What they saw was not a knight in shining armor, nor was it a majestic steed with well-groomed hair that was incomparably clean. They saw a large group of warriors who had returned from 100 battles. Even though it had been cleaned, bloodstains could still be seen on the armor. It was full of uneven marks, and there were even cracks caused by heavy weapons. Only a new piece of metal was embedded on it like a patch. Some of the knights' shields had obvious holes. That was the result of the troll throwing their spears. The sword was still sharp when it was pulled out. But upon closer inspection, one could see the unevenness on the blade. Those were the marks of the sword being polished again. The Alterac Eagle Knights were almost the same. What was more special was that many of them carried more than one sword, and many of them were broken. A qualified knight's sword was worth a lot of money. Normal steel swords cost at least 3 digits. So the tradition of knights was that when an older knight thought that an apprentice was qualified enough to be a knight, he would give a knight's sword to the apprentice. This was a legacy, and also a promise from the older generation to the younger generation. A knight was only allowed to have one sword at a time. There was only one circumstance in which a knight was allowed to carry multiple swords. That was, when he returned from the battlefield, he could bring back the swords of his elder or comrade who had died in battle. The long sword was the knight's tombstone, and also the knight's epitaph. The blood-stained swords that were even broken into two completely announced the fate and will of their owners to every audience. Countless people from the Rotterdam kingdom gasped. The kind-hearted girls sobbed uncontrollably. They had heard of the betrayal of the Alterac king, and they had publicly insulted the Alterac people countless times. But they had never thought about how much the Alterac knights had sacrificed in order to wash away this shame. Behind them were the Storm Guardians from Riptide Fortress. They carried the shields of their fallen comrades, and those charred shields told of the Red Dragon, who had still belonged to the Horde at that time, and how powerful his attacks had been. The Dalajan raised the broken tower shields and hand crossbows. The Kul Tiras carried a row of broken scimitars. There were many, many more. The warriors of the Alliance used the truest way to show the cruelty of war and the greatness of the warriors to the people who had stayed behind. There were no loud slogans and no triumphant expressions. The troops of the various countries advanced in silence. Perhaps an hour ago, the people who had not experienced the cruelty of war did not understand how the seemingly weak humans could defeat the ferocious beastmen. Now they all understood. That was what the warriors of the Alliance had exchanged with their blood and lives. They had fought for it with their greatest courage and the firmest will. No one knew who was the first to clap. No one knew who was the first to cheer. On both sides of the silent road, cheers suddenly rose to the sky. Warriors, good job. Thank you for fighting. Without you we would all die. You are the true heroes of the Alliance. I love you, I want to marry you. Whose tears were flying? Whose heart was trembling? Whose throat was it that was roaring? When the applause, cheers and shouts swept towards the victorious warriors, every warrior of the Alliance could not help but tear up. At this moment, their hardships and the sacrifice of their comrades suddenly felt that it was worth it. Long live the Alliance. Long live the warriors. The sun shone on the warriors' not-so-bright armor. Each armor seemed to be burning with raging flames. An indescribable brilliance rose from the warriors' bodies. Even the radiance of the sun could not cover such a bright light. It was a radiance that came from the soul. It was a radiance that symbolized courage. So much so that everyone could not bear to look away from these warriors. At this moment, the onlookers also gave the warmest cheers to the dwarves and high elves. Suddenly, the Rotterdam army, which was supposed to be the finale, appeared. Very strangely, countless people stopped what they were doing. There was no applause, no cheers, no rain of petals falling from the sky. Even the people of Rotterdam stared at the army of their country in disbelief. After seeing such a realistic, triumphant team that was so close to the war. The white horses that were so gorgeous that they looked like they were participating in a dressage competition, the pieces of brand new armor that were so shiny that they could be reflected in a mirror, and the light and gorgeous rapiers that were hung on the waists of the knights. Almost everything was deeply stimulating people's eyes. In an instant, everyone felt a burning pain coming from their eyes, piercing straight from the depths of their eye sockets to the depths of their hearts. If they did not see the allied army led by Duque and Anduin, perhaps they would applaud these seemingly gorgeous and mighty things, and the girls would scream at the handsome knights. But now, everyone felt that the last appearance of the Rotterdam Knights was simply a blasphemy to this tragic and unparalleled war. The people of the Rotterdam kingdom felt that they had been fooled and humiliated, especially when they saw the young nobles who were ignorant and incompetent, and could barely ride their horses, sneaking into the victorious return team. Get out! This is the festival of the warriors. Yes, get out. The Rotterdam does not need trash like you who pretend to have military merits. Get out. Get out. Get out. Tens of thousands of voices converged together, and soon, everyone consciously adjusted the rhythm of their roars. Get out. Get out. Get out. The roars were like the raging waves of the sea. The curses were earth-shattering. At this moment, Tarina's face lost all color. Chapter 594. What kind of hatred and resentment was there for the people of their own country to oppose the army of their own country? For a long time, the nobles of Lordaeron had lived a luxurious life, and had long forgotten the voice of the people. To them, the people were just wheat that would automatically grow every year. They had all kinds of responsibilities and obligations. They had to pay taxes to the nobles, provide labor for the nobles, and provide soldiers when the country was in danger. After more than 2,000 years of peace, the nobles had long forgotten that their ancestor was a warrior conferred by Emperor Saladin. This warrior's name was Lordan, and this warrior's son was called Menethil. Later on, Menethil named the land Thoradin the Great as Lordaeron, and Menethil became the royal family's surname. In that era where clans were the dominant force and there were no surnames, this was already a pioneering move. Suddenly being opposed by the seemingly docile people, not only Tarina's, but all the Lordaeron nobles around him were embarrassed. This is a pity, Zeon Greymane said. Jean Greymane said, it seems that someone down there has mistaken the difference between a triumphant return and a grand parade. Of course, Tarina's did not know that this proud and aloof King Gilneas, who seemed like a standard politician, would one day become the most reliable ally of the alliance. He only knew that Zeon was taking advantage of the situation. That's right. After Lord Presto appeared and presented the evidence, Zeon secretly offered to support a nephew of Presto. Zeon secretly offered to support a so-called nephew of Prianod's, who could not have been more distant, but Tarina's rejected him cruelly. Now everything was different. Looking at Anduin Lothar and Duke Marcus at the front of the victorious team, Tarina's knew that all of this had something to do with them. If he did not do anything, it would not look good during the throne meeting, even if he forcefully passed the resolution. I'm getting old. I want to rest before the triumphant return to the palace. Why don't we all rest in the side hall? Everyone knew that Tarina's could stand from dawn to dusk if the situation was favorable. Now that he suggested it, everyone knew that this was another round of quick and urgent political transactions. As the representative of Kuel Salis, Prince Kael, that's understood that this was a political game in the human world and had nothing to do with the elves. He was the one who truly rested. Lang and Dahlan looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. Now that Tarina's was taking advantage of his old age, he could not allow the old king to rest, could he? Lang and the other two nodded quietly to each other. They were going to meet up later. All of a sudden, the balcony of the palace that was more than 100 square meters became empty. Not a single king was paying attention to the victorious procession that would begin to arrive at the square in front of the palace in 20 minutes. In the side palace, Tarina's pushed open the huge golden door. The magnificent murals on the wall had always been his greatest pride and joy. Unfortunately, he was not in the mood to appreciate them now. The first to meet was naturally Jean. Zeon was extremely greedy towards Tarina's, but because of that, he was the easiest to convince. Yo, Tarina's, it seems that little Duque has given you quite a bit of trouble. It's just trouble, Tarina said with a cold expression. Tell me, what do you want in order to support Pristos? I want the Hillsbrad Plains, the Jasper Mine, Tobalad Island and the western coast next to South Shore. He knew that Jean would ask for a lot, but he did not expect him to be so greedy. He took away more than half of the essence of Hillsbrad in one go. The Hillsbrad Plains had been reclaimed by the refugees of Stormwind. Now everyone knew that it was a rich and fertile land. The refugees would all be evacuated next year. With the support of this fertile land, Gilneas' power would increase explosively in the next 20 years. Tarina said with a pained expression, all right. The second to meet was King Salash Trollbane of Stormguard. Tarina spoke first. Salas, you must support Lord Pristos this time. I can give you Terran Mill and South Shore. Salas sat in his luxurious chair like a statue. After a long while he shook his head and said, maybe their king and lord are guilty, but the people of Riptide Castle can't take Alterak's land. It's a blasphemy to our brave warriors. Tyrrhenus panicked when he heard Salas' words. Among the 6 human kingdoms, Kurtiras and Stormwind, who were outsiders, would vote against him. He needed at least 4 votes from the throne to make things look good. Who would have thought that Salas would reject him? Yes, that's right, Tyrrhenus' plan was to take Lordaeron's land for himself. Now that Salas was involved, he refused to play. How could he do that? Tyrrhenus' face darkened. Think about it, Salas. Your land has already become a wasteland. Even your food for the winter is provided by Lordaeron. You can be noble, but can you bear to see your people starve to death? The earthy highlands do not have much food to begin with. Salas' expression changed. Tyrrhenus was threatening him with food. South of Stromgard was the dwarves' territory. Whether it was the wetlands or Loch Moden, the dwarves barely had enough food for themselves. Other than Hillsbrad in the west, there was no other way out of the earthy highlands. If Alterak, controlled by Lordaeron, blocked the way out, then hundreds of thousands of people would starve to death. To restore Earthy's food production, his advisors told him that it would take at least 3 years. Moreover, he still had to rebuild Riptide Castle, which had been destroyed by the dragon. Salas lowered his head deeply, as if burying his head between his knees. I don't want the territory. Give me at least 500,000 tons of food every year for 5 years. As a noble knight, he hated political deals like this. As a king who was responsible for the future of millions of his people, he had no choice but to compromise with Tyrrhenus. Tyrrhenus left. He was not satisfied, but at least he had achieved his goal. At the 3rd meeting, Tyrrhenus met the hardest nail, Antonidas, who he thought would be easier to convince. Tyrrhenus, I'm not against you. But the Dalagan rejected the Lord of Prister. What? Tyrrhenus furrowed his brows. Because the Kirin Tor Assembly has secretly used all of their magic detection abilities, but still could not see through this mysterious Lord of Prister. He is either a Breaking Dawn mage on par with me, or he has a mysterious magical item that is comparable to a demigod gear. We will never support a mysterious person of unknown origin to be the king of Alterak. Chapter 595. No matter how hard Tyrrhenus tried, he could not convince Antonidas. From Tyrrhenus's perspective, this unreasonable archmage wanted to send someone he liked to Kirin Tor's dissection table to see what this mysterious person was made of. Tyrrhenus thought back to what Lord Presto had said in private. These crazy archmages are not good people. Your Majesty, have you ever thought that before opening the portal to grim battle, Antonidas would have sensed that there were a bunch of tribal chiefs there? Why did he insist on sending all of Lordaeron's elites there? Nearly 1,000 of Grim Battle's elite knights had died, and this was a pain in Tyrrhenus' heart. At the thought of this, he suddenly became distrustful of Antonidas. That's right, it was the great Tyrrhenus Menethil Tus, idea to make Lord Presto the king of Alterak. You bastards only have 2 choices. Obey obediently or get out of my way. Antonidas, you're wrong. Letting a truly noble person rule Alterak, not a despicable traitor, is the wish of all the other human kingdoms. For the time being, I can't think of anyone better than Lord Presto. There is, please let me know. If not, then I hope you can follow the will of Lordaeron. Also, if you are not suitable, the Alliance can still remove King Presto in the future. Antonidas was so angry at Tyrrhenus that he wanted to vomit blood. Since when was the Alliance above the king's power? Would that kid of unknown origin still be so obedient when he went up on stage? Would he give in so easily and leave the stage himself? Tyrrhenus, you won't have a good ending if you keep using force. Don't forget, Duque has already made his move. Even though he knew that Tyrrhenus hated Duque the most, Antonidas did not mind Duque being implicated. King Tyrrhenus immediately thought back to that time. That time he tried to use the lower nobles to threaten the Bara family and control the whole of Alterak. In the end, the people he sent out were hit with iron white gloves countless times and became useless. On the surface, that mission had nothing to do with Tyrrhenus, but everyone knew that it was a slap in the face to the Menethil royal family. Humph! Duque won't be able to save the Bara family, Tyrrhenus said firmly. The drumming of the guards of honor outside grew louder and louder. The triumphant procession was about to reach the palace. Unless Tyrrhenus was seriously ill, he would have to go out and welcome the victorious warriors. Antonidas, promise me that the Dalagan will at least remain neutral on this matter. Otherwise, the Dalagan will be the enemy of the Rotterdam kingdom. After this is done, I will compensate the Dalajan. This was a blatant threat. Antonidas looked like he had just eaten shit. He almost had a stroke. After a long time, he squeezed out a word through his teeth. Okay. The kings who had just rested, gathered again. In the huge square of the palace, Tyrrhenas received the cheers of more than 100,000 citizens. No matter what, it was the Rotterdam Kingdom Alliance, and the Rotterdam Kingdom was the leader of the alliance. This was an honor that no one could take away from him. After symbolically inspecting the captured orc weapons, Tyrrhenas walked in front of Orgrim. Originally, it was a very satisfying thing to have a great chieftain of an enemy force, whose strength was on par with each other, kneel to him. Being pressed down by 4 strong humans, the weak Orgrim could not take it anymore. Even his neck was almost broken. He lowered his proud head to Tyrrhenas. Unfortunately, he already knew that Orgrim did not have anything nice to say. Otherwise, Orgrim would have said the classic, "Orcs will never be slaves" line. Tyrrhenas was not interested in Orgrim's submission. To him, the orcs were a bunch of poor people. Not only did they cause trouble, but they also had nothing to gain from it. Other than being used as miners and gladiators, they had no value at all. So, he pretended to accept the cheers of the 100,000 people and ended the victory ceremony hastily. After entering the palace, just as the kings were about to sit down in the throne room, their true intentions were revealed. Wait. Xion suddenly said, "Not everyone has the right to enter here. Those who have the right to enter the throne room are either the kings and representatives of the various countries, or the heroes of the alliance. But now there is a traitor here." King Gilnas's declaration shocked the dwarves and elves. Traitor? As Xion pointed, everyone's eyes immediately fell on Duke Barov, who was about to walk towards Alterac. Not only Duke Barov but even General Haas, who was behind the Duke, suddenly turned pale. Duke Barov was attending the throne room as Alterac's representative. To accuse a country's representative in a meeting like this, how much hatred was there? Without sufficient evidence, this was definitely a huge matter that could push an entire country to its death. What evidence do you have? Duke Barov was trembling as he pointed at King Xion. Evidence? Of course I have it. Jean snapped his fingers and the door to the side hall suddenly opened. 12 guards escorted 2 young men dressed in ordinary, but still relatively clean clothes into the hall. Looking at the 2 faces that looked similar to Duke Barov's, everyone knew that the mystery was solved. I think many of you have seen these 2 before. They are the sons of Duke Barov, the first and second in line to the Barov family, Wilton Barov and Alex Barov. Duke Barov felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His body trembled even more violently. He said in a trembling voice, "They disappeared long ago after the Alterac incident. I've already issued a declaration to strip the 2 unfilial sons of their inheritance and drive them out of the family. From that day on, everything they did had nothing to do with Duke Barov or Alterac. Now the only heir of the Barov family is Lucia Barov." "You stingy old man, how could you give the family's fortune to that bitch? I am the only heir of the Barov family." "No, it's me. Wilton, go to hell. I am the true heir of the Barov family." The 2 unfilial sons of the Barov family were already fighting amongst themselves without Xion's words. Duke Barov argued back, "That doesn't prove anything?" Xion dropped a bomb with a smile. "Yes, but everyone must know that it was because these 2 from the Barov family joined the horde that Orgrim's army was able to easily pass through the mountains of Alterac, avoid all the sentries, and kill their way to Lordaeron like a divine army descending from the heavens." Chapter 596. Boxes were carried out by the Rotterdam guards. Xion waved his hand. "This is the map of the Alliance's military deployment around the Alterac Mountains. There's also their pledge of loyalty to Orgrim. Oh, there's also the pledge of loyalty from all the Alterac nobles led by Piranad." Duke Barov's hands were trembling as he picked up a document. He had nothing to say because the Barov family was in charge of the logistics of the entire Alterac Mountains. On the other hand, because he deliberately did not decide on an absolute successor, and wanted his 2 sons to compete for it, it caused his subordinates to split up, each supporting a certain prince. It was hard to guard against a thief in the family. Even the higher-ups of the Barov family who gave the map to Wilton and the Alex brothers did not expect them to betray their father long ago. Duke Barov also did not expect that the first mastermind was the dead Eden. He had used these 2 rebellious sons to get information. After the 2 brothers left for the tribe, these things fell into Orgrim's hands. There was no way to explain that these maps were indeed leaked by the Barov family. Even if it wasn't sh*t, it would still be sh*t. The guards of the royal family of the Rotterdam Kingdom passed the ironclad evidence to each of the kings. Even if they knew about this long ago, and even if it had been a long time ago when they saw the signatures of the Alterac nobles, they still felt an indescribable anger. It was not just the kings. Only 2 attendants were allowed to stand behind each seat, and they had the same expression as their master. Of course there were exceptions. The 3 commanders, Andoin, Duque and Mograine, had their own seats. Unexpectedly, Andoin and Lang had brought Legolas and the other 3 that Duque had invited. Behind Duque were Elugia and Aurelia. Last night, Duque had insisted that Duke Barov let Elugia follow him. Duke Barov now understood. Elugia's body was trembling slightly. She could fully understand how her father, who was being condemned by everyone at this moment, was being interrogated and tortured mentally. You 2 tell me everything you know. This is your final salvation. Jean waved his hand. Therefore this pair of bastard brothers vividly told the truth, that they knew. In their words, the Barov family had pledged their loyalty to the Horde even earlier than Eden Piraeus, in order to prevent their rich territory from being affected by the flames of war. However, the Barov family's way of doing things was smarter and more in line with the style of nobles. That was to bet on both sides. As the only 2 heirs of the Barov family at that time, they first went to Orgrim to gain his trust. Prince Barov, on the other hand, stood aloof and unyielding. In this way, no matter if the Alliance won or if the Horde destroyed the Alliance, the glory of the Barov family would continue. 2 sides, aren't they? However, this was indeed the style of a businessman. And the Barov family was such a family with a strong merchant atmosphere. There were witnesses, material evidence, motive, precedent, and background. Everything made sense. At this moment almost all the kings believed it. Even King Dai Lingua looked at Duque suspiciously. On the other side, if not for Duque's warning, even King Lang would have believed it. However, even Lang was skeptical. If it wasn't for the fact that he had never done such a thing before, even Alex Barov himself would have believed it. The old duke's heart sank into a bottomless, icy hell. He looked at his 2 sons who had become greedy due to their lack of discipline, and allowed themselves to be manipulated by those clever politicians. Suddenly he laughed maniacally. Ha! Ha! Loud and unbridled laughter reverberated throughout the entire throne room. What are you laughing at, you despicable traitor? King Jean scolded. No. I'm just laughing at myself. I gave birth to my sons, but because of the family business I did not teach them well. In the end they turned into 2 super bastards. Old man, watch your mouth. We are both traitors of the Alliance. What right do you have to laugh at me? Faced with the scolding of his 2 sons, Duke Barov's laughter grew colder and colder. He looked at his sons as if he was looking at 2 dead men. Foolish sons. Do you think those greedy bastards who are after Alterac's land will honor their promise to you 2 idiots? Honor? Maybe they will. But if they give you the property and land today, they can take it back next year with a random excuse and send you to the gallows. No one would really protect 2 traitors of the Alliance. The old duke hit the nail on the head and told the truth, which really made the 2 stupid sons shiver. Jean suddenly felt that the situation was getting out of hand. He turned to look at Tyrrhenus. Tyrrhenus knew that this was all the sly old fox Jean was willing to do. He glanced at the expressionless Duque and pretended to stand up. All right. Since His Majesty Grameen has presented the evidence that Duke Barov is a traitor of the Alliance, do you have anything to say? Or rather, Duke, do you have any evidence to prove your innocence? Evidence? How could there be any evidence to prove his innocence in such a matter? It was as stupid as asking you to prove that your mother was your mother. Duke Barov trembled. He knew that if King Guinevere and King Lordaeron dared to plot against him, they would not leave any loopholes. In front of these 2 absolute rulers, a duke who was not even a king was just a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. In fact, his 2 idiotic sons had indeed joined the Horde. He did not look at Duque. From the moment Duque refused to cooperate, he no longer had any hope that Duque would help him. His only hope was that Duque could protect Elugia. The old duke raised his head proudly. King Menethil, you win. What do you mean I win? Tyrrhenus said shamelessly. This is the Alliance and we value fairness and justice. If there is enough evidence, even the testimony of a king can be overturned. Elugia, who was standing beside Duque, could not hold it in any longer. She slowly reached out with trembling hands and tugged on the sleeve of Duque's robe. 1 second later, at this unexpected moment, Duque suddenly raised his right hand and requested to speak. Tyrrhena's heart skipped a beat, but he pretended to be calm. Sir Marcus? Duque smiled. I would like to interrogate the Horde's great chief Orgrim. I would like to hear from him whether he captured the Bear of Brothers in the Alterac Palace, or whether he received help from the two brothers. Chapter 597. Anduin would never forget how his treasured sword, Quel Azarim, was broken. That's right, his sword could not harm a person of noble character. If he was not 100% sure before, then everything that happened after he brought the shard back to the Archbishop of Holy Light, Alonsus Fail, and placed it in the holy pool in Stratholme confirmed his suspicions. This was because the shattered divine sword was actually being reforged by itself. Although it was slow, it was indeed being reforged. In other words, if this deduction was correct, then Orgrim, as a person of noble character, would definitely tell the truth, even if it was related to a duke of the opposing faction who was not important to him. Anduin's eyes lit up. I agree with Lord Marcus. We need the testimony of the Horde's chief, Orgrim, as an important witness. King Leon shuddered at this moment, and he immediately understood why this was happening. After all, Lang's once invincible sword was broken at a crucial moment on the battlefield, and he almost lost his best friend. This made Lang feel conflicted for a long time. I agree as well, Lang chimed in. Duke Barav raised his head. He was stunned, but there was also a hint of hope. Because Duque did not abandon him when he was at his most desperate. He did not know what the point of interrogating Orgrim was, but at least it was a hope. At this time Tarina spoke. Summon the chief Orgrim if he is still sane. A servant left after receiving the order. At this moment, Duke Barav, Lang and Anduin all felt their hearts skip a beat. After a moment, as expected. Your Majesties, the Horde's great chief Orgrim has suffered a severe mental shock due to today's captive offering ceremony. He seems to be going crazy and is struggling non-stop. We have no choice but to add 2 sets of the largest shackles on him, each weighing 100 pounds. That's right, Tarina's words were a hint. After realizing that Orgrim, whom they had been neglecting, could be a flaw and a variable, they made up for it. Perhaps they used some kind of drug to temporarily make Orgrim lose his sanity. All of a sudden, all chances of turning the tables were gone. Duke Barav's face was ashen. Anduin was a little puzzled. With Duque's intelligence, he shouldn't have given his opponent a chance to make up for his flaws. What was Duque trying to do? Tarina spoke. Then, there seems to be no other way. We can only follow Orgrim's confession. Do you have any other requests or new evidence? If not, then we will hold a throne vote to decide whether or not to label the Alex Barav family as traitors of the Alliance. The air was filled with silence. Tarina's ignored the doubtful and disapproving looks, as well as the sobbing of Elusia. Then let's begin the voting. The throne voting was the highest form of voting in the Alliance. At first, in order to prevent the commanders from coming from the same country, the commanders themselves did not have the right to vote. Each country would have 1 vote, and the leader of the Rotterdam Kingdom would have 2 votes. The countries involved had no right to vote. They could vote for, against, or abstain from voting. The motion would be decided by the result with the most votes. If the number of votes for and against is the same, the Alliance country will be the final decision. Kings who think that the Barav family is a traitor, please raise your hand. Jean was the first to raise his hand, followed by Salas and Antonidas, and finally Tarinas. Now, according to the Alliance leader's double vote, there were 5 votes. But that was it. Tarina suddenly felt a little uneasy. He pretended to be calm and said, All right, those who object, please raise your hand. Those who abstain from voting, you can remain silent. Lang was the first to speak. This time, the voting rights of Stormwind will be given to Duke Marcus. Almost as soon as Lang finished speaking, Duque spoke. His voice was loud and full of authority. Stormwind objects. King Daelin frowned. As one of the staunchest allies of Stormwind, he immediately followed. Kurtiras objects. A situation that Tarinas had never expected had happened. He had thought that the dwarves would take an indifferent attitude. He even knew that Lang did not communicate with the dwarves about this. Unexpectedly, when Magni saw that it was Duque who objected, he slammed the armrest of the throne. Cosmodin objects. Along with Magni's loud voice, Kudrin Wildhammer said, Eagle's Nest Mountain objects. Who was Magni Bronzebeard? He was the leader of the dwarves, the Ironforge Bronzebeard dwarf. He was on the same side as the gnomes. Magni objected, and Master Craftsman Jurbin immediately followed. Nomarigan objects. At this moment, Tarinas's face turned green. He finally saw it. These bastards did not look at the evidence or reason. They simply objected because Duque objected. Rather than believing in objective things, they believed in Duke's judgment, who had truly helped them. In this suspicious matter they clearly stood on Duque's side. Alright, now it was 5 against 5. In theory, if this was the final result, Tyrrhenus could still use his power as the leader of the alliance to pass this motion. The problem was, there was still one country that had the right to vote. Suddenly, all eyes fell on the face of Prince Kale, that's of Kuel Salus, who represented the Sun King in the victory ceremony. The handsome Kaiser's face was burning hot. He never thought that he would be involved in the battle between the leader of the alliance, Tyrrhenus, and Duque. Before this there was no news of this at all. No country's representative came to him. This was definitely a political disgrace for Kuel Salus, because it meant that the High Elves were being marginalized in the political arena. Of course, in a sense, this was also the result of the High Elves' long-term self-isolation. Personally, he should definitely help Duque. Unfortunately, he knew the mood of the kingdom very well. Even though Duque led the army to save Kuel Salus still sent a lot of reinforcements to the Alliance's army in the later stages of the war. In fact, the entire upper echelons of Kuel Salus hated Duque. Simple jealousy. What they could not do, Duque did. They could not protect their own kingdom and they still needed Duque's help. The arrogant elves' faces were dark. Moreover, the counselor Marion they sent was said to be a servant of the Wings of Death and was captured by the Red Dragon Queen. Many counselors could not take it emotionally and could only secretly vent their anger on Duque. Therefore in public Kale, that's could not help Duque. After a long while Kale, that's finally said, Kuel Salus abstains. Chapter 598. Kale, that's was in a miserable situation. He never thought that things would turn out this way. Right now he was stuck in the middle with no one on either side. After Kuel Salus was invaded, Kale, that's had a clear understanding that the era of isolationism was over. He didn't know what would happen in the future, but it was right to have a good relationship with Rotterdam. On the other hand, it was also irrational to offend Duque, the smartest person in the entire alliance. Not only did he feel like his long-term emotional investment had gone to waste, but he also had an ominous premonition that came from fate. This made Kale, that's very uncomfortable. If he didn't want to play it safe and wanted to see the situation clearly before making a decision, this wouldn't have happened. If the previous vote had already been decided, Kuel Salus wouldn't have to be a clown. He never thought that after Lang handed over the voting rights to Duque, the 5 heads of state actually completed 5 votes in 3 seconds, and all of them were against. This pushed Kuel Salus to the top of the wave. After shouting out the word abstain with all his courage, Kale, that's mouthed in sorry to Duque. He didn't know how much of Duque's impression of him would be restored by doing this, but if he didn't do anything he would never forgive himself. It's okay. Duque didn't mouth it but said it out softly. You heard at least half of the kings. This made Kale, that's feel awkward again. Someone else was the one who was really embarrassed. Tyrrhenus was forced to a dead end. He had never imagined that the alliance would be split because of a duke from a small country. He was so close to being slapped in the face. Of course, he could suppress the accusation of Duke Barov's rebellion for the sake of the alliance's harmony. That way he would have to face a lot of opposition in the country. All his previous plans against Alterac would be for naught. In fact, from the beginning, Tyrrhenus knew that it was impossible to completely annex Alterac in a short period of time. So, from the beginning he used a more indirect method, such as handing it over to someone who was trustworthy, talented, and seemed to be interested in peace and unity. Unfortunately, it seemed that even the first step of clearing the obstacles for Lord Prestel's ascension to the throne was met with great resistance. He really wanted to kill Duque. Why did the Stormwind Kingdom publicly announce that all the refugees would retreat within a year, and that they had no intention of touching any part of the Rotterdam Kingdom's territory at all? Yet, at this juncture the Rotterdam Kingdom was stuck between a rock and a hard place. If Alicia was really Duque's woman, Tyrrhenus might be more wary, but no matter how many times he checked, the maids of Rotterdam swore that Alicia was definitely a virgin. He really did not understand why Duque, who had no interest in Alterac, would protect Duke Barov. Tyrrhenus Menethil gripped the king's scepter tightly in his hand, the muscles in his face trembling, and he took 3 deep breaths. He still made a decision. According to the iron law of the Alliance, I hereby, as the leader of the Rotterdam Alliance, declare that although there is no concrete evidence to prove that Duke Barov was involved in the rebellion against the Alliance, the Barov family of Alterac is guilty. Yes, he was still guilty. If he didn't announce it, all of his plans would go up in smoke. Lordaeron's losses in the war would be irreparable. Lordaeron, the strongest human kingdom, would lose all of its face. The price he paid to Xi'an, the political capital he used to threaten Salas, and the consequences of forcing Dalaran to obey him would all go down the drain. He would have to bear all of it himself. There was no turning back. Tyrrhenus had no choice but to declare it, even if it meant offending many kingdoms and the most legendary hero of the alliance, Duke Marcus. On the other side, Elucia's body trembled, but Duque held her hand. Elucia looked up in disbelief and suddenly heard Duque's words. I express my extreme regret for this sentence, and Stormwind reserves the right to protest in the future. Duque was going to go against Tyrrhenus. According to the alliance, the punishment for traitors will be decided by the leader. Tyrrhenus decided to ignore Duque's words, but in his heart he was already a little afraid. Originally he was going to sentence Duke Barav to death because Duke Barav's influence in Alterac was just too shocking. If he did not clear the obstacles, he did not know if Lord Presto would be able to fully control Alterac. His biggest mistake was to misjudge Duque's influence in the alliance. Tyrrhenus stared at Duque and saw the threat in Duque's eyes. His heart skipped a beat, but he gritted his teeth and changed his words. In the name of the leader of the Rotterdam Alliance, I announce that in view of the Barav family's full support to the alliance, their crimes will be reduced. Duke Barav will be stripped of his title and demoted to a commoner, and all of the Barav family's land will be taken away. Their land will be controlled by the future king of Alterac. Alex Barav and his family will be allowed to leave with all their belongings, but will be banned from entering Alterac for the rest of their lives. This is the final sentence. Almost as soon as he finished speaking, Duke Barav seemed to have aged several decades in an instant. From a man in his twilight years, he became an old man with one foot in the grave. At this time Duque's voice rang out again, what a regrettable sentence. All right, I will also take this opportunity to announce that Countess Elucia Barav of Stormwind will be granted the Redridge Mountain, Lake of Tranquility, and Lakeside Town. A slap in the face. A direct slap in the face. Even though Duque did not do anything, Tyrrhenus felt as if he had been slapped countless times by Duque. His face felt like it was on fire. On the other side, he used his authority as the leader of the alliance to strip the Barav family of their roots. In this era, land was the foundation of everything. As long as there was fertile land, the family and even the kingdom would be able to prosper forever. Duke, on the other hand, followed the rules of the game of nobles, directly turning Elucia Barav from a nobleman with no roots into a real noble in the truest sense. Everyone could see that Duque was not willing to cut off the Barav family's roots for Rotterdam, and was going after Tyrrhenus to slap his face. No one understood why Duque would do this. But at this moment, Elucia, who was standing diagonally behind Duque, had tears streaming down her face. She suddenly made a shocking decision. She raised her head and said loudly, I announce that I, Elucia Barav, will renounce the Barav family name. Chapter 599. Elucia was very brave. This was an era where bloodlines were very important. Almost every noble considered themselves descendants of Thoradin the Great. In fact, even the current royal families of the Seven Kingdoms were mostly companions who fought alongside Thoradin the Great 2,800 years ago. For example, Tyrrhena's ancestor, Lorden, and Sorash Trollbane's ancestor was given the surname Trollbane by the Great. No one could deny the importance of a noble bloodline in the human world. Everyone knew that since Duque dared to protect Elucia, the Barav family would not be severed in the distant future. In a sense, as long as Elucia still carried the name of Barav, even if she was defined as a traitor, although this traitor was questionable, she would still be a noble daughter. Under the premise that Duque refused to marry a princess of the Seven Kingdoms, even if he married Elucia and changed her surname to Barav, no one would think that there was anything wrong with Duque. On the contrary, the Marcus that Duque made up was a lowly surname in the eyes of the nobles. And Elucia's announcement of giving up her surname was actually out of good intentions. She did not want Duque to offend the strongest human kingdom, Lordaeron, because of her. That was the thinking of the nobles of Azeroth. Tyrrhenus heaved a sigh of relief when Elucia made that declaration. In the eyes of many kings and nobles, Duque's side had given in. Giving up the surname meant that the lineage was broken. Even if you had the so-called noble bloodline, no nobles would recognize your bloodline unless it was absolutely necessary. Who knew? Duque was not going to have it. Shut up. Elucia, your two brothers should be hanged, but your father is not guilty. Taking away the fief is already the biggest punishment for you and your parents. Since His Highness Menethil did not take away the surname of Barav. You don't have to, and you don't have the right to give her up. The count under me can only be Elucia Barav, and not a woman without a surname. As soon as these words came out, the throne room simply shook the earth and mountains. Crazy. He was going crazy. Duque was going to fight Tyrrhenus to the death. What kind of enmity did they have with each other? Generally speaking, there was no enmity of killing one's father or stealing one's wife, nor was there any feud between the two countries. It was impossible for there to be such opposing emotions. What was Duque doing? If it was in private, Tyrrhenus would have exploded like a volcano. But this was a throne conference. You are condemning Prince Berev, he is conferring a daughter, and in theory it is not the same thing at all. Tyrrhenus trembled violently as if he had been electrocuted by Yang Shosho. Duque wasn't just slapping him in the face, he was slapping him in the face, peeling off his skin, spitting on him, peeing on him, and finally playing disco dancing on his ancestral grave. If he didn't do something to suppress Duque today, then he really wouldn't be able to survive in the future. Only Lang and Andoin knew that Duque was not giving Tyrrhenus any chance at all. They looked at the four guards behind them and chose to remain silent. Take your father away, Countess Elugia. After instructing Elugia to support the old Duke who could barely walk, Duke Berev left. Duke once again looked at Tyrrhenus. Tyrrhenus finally made his move. He stood up and raised the king's scepter high. Today is a day of celebration for the Alliance's victory. We have expelled the traitor Berev from the Alliance. Today is also a day of celebration for the 11 countries of the Alliance. I believe that there should be no empty seats on the 11 thrones, so I would like to introduce the descendant of the Alterac royal family, the Lord of Pristo. First, the door to the side hall opened, and a group of Rotterdam royal family guards walked in, each holding a copy of the identity document of the Lord of Pristo. In this era, the most important thing to prove a noble's bloodline was a genealogy. A set of magically preserved genealogy was the most valuable evidence. Then, with a so-called ancestral relic, and a simple blood test to match the marriage partner between nobles with the royal genealogy of other families, they would basically be 100% confirmed as descendants of nobles. Seeing this, Duque was dumbfounded. Damn, this is the so-called absolute proof? Forget about DNA, there wasn't even a blood test. Duque felt like he was in a trance. Acting pretentious was actually this simple. If I had known earlier, I would have also gotten myself a pretentious genealogy and then made up my name to be the Kaiser and Caesar emperors who followed great Emperor Saladin. Duque silently looked at the group of kings and nodded. Then the main character of the day finally appeared. Many people thought that the Lord of Pristo's expression would be even happier. After all, it was not every day that someone became a king. Of course, the hereditary one was not one of them. When the 5-meter-tall main door of the main hall opened with a trumpet, Lord de War Pristo walked out from the fully opened magnificent door. Many people who saw this lord for the first time were shocked. Lothar was already very tall and burly among humans, but this Lord of Pristo was even taller. At a glance he was at least 10 meters tall. For humans this was the domain of giants. He wasn't fat but he wasn't tall and skinny either. He wore a black and silver-edged robe that fitted him very well. The deep black gave others a noble and elegant impression, and the silver lines outlined his perfect figure. Of course, the most eye-catching part was the ferocious dragon head embroidery on his left chest. The ferocity of the dragon head leaping out of his clothes was even more powerful than the lion emblem of Stormwind. At this moment he clearly hadn't participated in the war against the Horde, but he just looked like a mighty war hero. It was rare for Aurelia to tease Duque at a time like this. Duque, he looks more like a hero in the Alliance than you do. Just like, Duque replied calmly. Lord Pristo first saluted Tyrrhenus, then bowed elegantly. From the north, to the east, to the south and then to the west he repeated this gesture in every direction of the throne room. It was an incomparable gesture of etiquette. It was as if only when this young noble was here, the soft, smooth curtains, golden chandeliers, and even the pure white marble steps could make this throne room look grand and majestic. De War Pristo greets your majesties and commanders. After greeting everyone, Pristo stood straight like a javelin in the middle of the throne room. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.